a little bit late today, but I want to welcome you to our virtual question and answer session for our lower elementary program. I think I know most everyone on the screen, but my name is Kara Ebe-Cook. I'm our admissions person here. And we wanted to take some time this afternoon to not only introduce our program to prospective families that are looking at our school, but also our current families that have students that will be moving into the lower elementary program in the fall. So I want to introduce everybody that we have here on the screen with us. We have Morgan Sampson, who is one of our lower elementary directresses or guides. We have Leanne Mattingly, also lower elementary directress. We have Jess DiFrancesco, same lower elementary directress. And then we have Miss Nicole Donistork, who is an assistant in the lower elementary environment. Also, I have with us this afternoon, Miss Simone Summer, who I know works with a lot of your children in the primary level, so she can kind of help answer some questions about bridging that gap. And finally, Miss Heather McCabe, who is our Montessori director. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the team. They're going to kind of give some overviews of all the areas, but certainly if you have any questions, be sure to hand those to us in the chat box and we'll take questions throughout as well. So Ms. DiFrancesco, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
I can't hear her. I think she's muted.
Okay, thanks everybody. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties again. So what I had just said was, I'm sorry for being late. Thank you for your patience. And as I still somehow don't know how to unmute myself. Okay, so thank you for coming everybody. I really appreciate you coming and your patience and your listening to us share with you today about our program. So just to give you a kind of an overview of our curriculum, we call it at the elementary level, which the elementary level includes age 6 to 12. Lower elementary is just age 6 through 9, so first, second, and third grade. But the curriculum and the training for all of the teachers is the same. So for the elementary level, we call it cosmic education. And it's the idea that all of the subjects are kind of part of each other, and we can use each of the subjects to kind of help explore the other subjects. So we study in our classroom, we have language and math, but we also talk about geometry, geography, history, and biology. And we also include music and art. So those are our 8 major subject areas, and we're always trying to find ways to integrate them together. So just today, I did a lesson about graphs, you know, bar graphs, but I did it about the 5 longest rivers in the world, because just last week we had a geography lesson about rivers. So we're always trying to kind of connect the subjects together, because that reflects how real life is. So we always talk with the children about how everything kind of fits together on a larger scale, and talking about how, you know, everything kind of affects each other. So that's a general overview kind of the subjects that we cover and how they are kind of integrated together throughout the children's workday. So,
Okay, I'll take it from there. I think, Jess, are you done? I'm not sure because it's a little frozen on my screen.
Oh yes, that was me. Go ahead, Morgan.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Morgan Sampson. I have met a few of you from Kardec or art class or other places, but I'm Morgan Sampson. I'm one of the lower elementary guides. And so I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the different plane of development that your children will be entering. I think everyone is transitioning from primary to elementary here. So there are a few things that are happening. And so Maria Montessori specifically observed children over a large amount of time. And so she organized this growth into 4 of development. And so the first plane being birth to 6, and then the second plane being from 6 to 12. And these are the first 3 years in the lower elementary classroom. And so there are many characteristics that the second plane has, like physical, psychological, and social characteristics. And our environment supports that in so many different ways. And so I wanted to start with just one of those is the reasoning mind. So before, your children had this absorbent mind where they were absorbing an enormous amount of tactile, sensorial things. They were hearing a lot of language. And now now they're in this developmental stage where they can use that and they have this reasoning mind. So you're going to get a lot of questions on like, why are things the way that they are? And so in the classroom, we'll have, even just during a lesson, we'll ask a child, more deep thought-provoking questions that you probably wouldn't see as much in primary to kind of get that going. Another thing is they have a gregarious nature, so they are very social creatures at this time. So we allow them to work in small groups. Our classroom is filled with tables, about 4 to 6 chairs at each table, and so that part of the environment allows for that growth in that area. Let me think of what else. Also, another difference from the primary to the lower elementary, that transition into another plane, is the functional independences teach me how to do for myself, and in this plane of development, it's teach me how to think for myself. So let me see. And then I think I'm going to pass it on to Leanne. She's going to talk a little bit about independence.
Hey, hi everyone. I recognize 2 families that have children that are already in elementary, so you kind of know the difference between what happens in elementary and what happens in primary. And like Ms. Sampson was explaining, there are different traits and characteristics, and Montessori was very specific on the needs of the children in this age, from the 6 to 9-year-olds, are much different from the needs of the primary child. So when you're first coming into the classroom, it might be like, whoa, what's happening? It's so different, unless you've already had a child that's gone through the elementary or started with elementary. So, and what I'm talking about is our schedule for the day. So what the children in elementary usually do is they come in and they are either going to write in their journals what the work they're going to choose, or they're going to choose work and then write as they go through their day. So when your child is just moving into elementary, that's a big job. It's something new for them. So usually what they'll do is they'll have a partner, and that partner will help them say, oh, let's choose this work, and then I'll show you how to write it in your journal, or or they'll do it first with their partner. It depends on what their partner wants to do. So what we usually do, so that your child gets used to that kind of routine, and in primary they're choosing on their own also, but they're in elementary, it's different because they're wanting to work together. So you're going to see a lot more group work and a lot more socialization as far as talking about what's fair and what's right and who's who does what. It's a different environment in that way. But as far as our day goes, we usually get in the morning and choose your work, and then you're writing in your journal as you go through your day. And then we have lunchtime where the children are choosing to, either they choose where to sit or we help them choose. It depends on the dynamics. So we make sure that everybody's harmonious and happy at lunchtime. And then at lunch, then we go from lunchtime to playtime. After playtime, I think both classes have read aloud. And then after read aloud, then we go back to the normal work cycle until the end of the day. And then at the end of the day, everybody has their jobs, and they have responsibility to clean the classroom, which means cleaning the shelves. Maybe they get to do laundry, or maybe they get to do the cubbies, which is always exciting, or they do the garden. So everyone has a job that they're actually contributing to the care of the environment. So that's something that you'll see us doing in elementary that's kind of important. And I'm trying to think if we do have Spanish. two days a week, and that happens after lunchtime, I think. And then and we have sports 1 day a week in the mornings. Usually was Monday morning for our class, and then Friday mornings for Misty Francesco's class. But those happen every week also. So does anyone have any questions about the schedule or about the tendencies of this age, or anything they're concerned about with their children? No? Okay.
I have a question, Miss Leanne.
Yes?
Can you guys tell me again the subjects that in Laura? I got history, math, geometry, biology.
Oh, geometry and geography
Yeah.
Okay,
and music.
music,
And language. Did you get language too?
language. No, I didn't get language.
That's a big one. Language and reading. Language and reading kind of fall.
Language,
We
reading.
put those all together, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna go, Jess, to showing the room after this, unless anyone else has any questions about that, and then we can move on to that. What do we think?
Okay.
Okay, so I am sitting in my history and geography area. We kind of divide geography up into two branches. One branch would be your sciences. So like physical science, we'll talk about how the earth was formed. We'll talk about rivers and winds, like wind patterns, global winds, how landforms are made, the relationship between the sun and the earth, things like that. So we have like a science portion of it. We have a good deal of scientific demonstrations, which we don't use the term right away, but would be some like laws of chemistry, some laws of physics. So that's like part of our science geography portion. And then we also have what I kind of call like human geography. So that would be flags and maps, researching different countries and things like that. So I'm sitting in the geography area, geography and history. So the geography shelf is there, and that has some maps for the children to explore. They like to do research on different flags from different countries and kind of what they represent. And then we also have our history section, which is kind of right behind me. I was hoping for a bigger screen so that you could see more, but the lens through which we kind of view our history curriculum is this idea of fundamental needs. So the idea that all humans have the same basic needs for food, clothing, and shelter, transportation, but also things like art and music and beauty. And then once we have an understanding that all humans have these things that they need, we start to look at their activities that they did to meet their needs. So we'll look way back to the early humans, the very, very first humans, and kind of the very basic things that they did for, finding food and clothing, and then how those things got more and more sophisticated. And then we can look at lots of different civilizations through history. So we might look at, I have some material for the Incan Empire right here. I have material for the Kingdom of Zimbabwe and Africa. So just kind of different groups throughout history and what activities they sort of did to meet those needs. And that kind of gives us an understanding of human behavior throughout history, which makes, when we look at kind of world events, gives us a little bit of context. We also talk about human migration, why humans move around. And then also we have the telling time kind of falls under history in our curriculum. It could also be considered math. But that's what I have over here on this shelf. So just practicing the hours on the clock, but also days of the week, months of the year, where those names come from. And then also like prehistoric time. We talk a little, actually we talk a lot, especially in the beginning of the year, about like prehistoric times on Earth before humans came. So that's kind of an overview of our history and geography curriculum.
I'm over in the math area. We actually have our math broken up, math in one area and then geometry in the other. But I can I'm going to start in the math area, but there, I wanted to show you though, you may have seen this in the primary classroom. So there are some similarities here, but we expand on it. We'll go in more into cubing and squaring and the algorithms in that. And you can also do multiples with those and counting. And then over here is where we have a lot of multiplication materials. So these are all materials, material abstractions, where the children can manipulate the material to practice operations or any sort of arithmetic. Sorry, there's a big math section, so now I'm going along. So we have some decimal fraction boards. That you might have seen something like this in primary, but we go up to the, oh, that's pretty sunny. We go up to the millions. So there's just, everything is interdependent between the planes, and it really expands in the elementary. So we have some division area with our racks and tubes, our golden beads you've seen in primary, but again, we keep on expanding on them. It's a little sunny right here. And over here, we have some fraction materials. This is a new one that your children will be working with. And I'll go a little over to the geometry area. Weird not having anyone in here. And then we have some materials that are new to this elementary classroom. So even here, this is a materialized abstraction of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it's a physical way of exploring that algorithm. It's pretty neat. And so, yes. So that's the math area of the classroom. So it's split into two. We, just for the children to better kind of categorize those, we split them into two. And then I think, Leanne, you're going to show language.
Yeah, I'm in language. So we're all social distanced apart. So I'm in the language area. And the language, actually, just so you're kind of at ease, if your child is not reading yet, we still work with the movable alphabet, which you can recognize, right? It's just on paper instead of the big letters. And then we have movable alphabet they work with. And then we have the, let's see if I can get it on, there we go, like the phonogram card or the puzzle words that they worked with in primary. So if they're not reading, we still have the material that they are going to keep continuing building their reading skills. So we have the phonetic books up here. Hope you can see them. And then we just have a lot of support for the early reader also. And then we start going into grammar. So these are the grammar boxes. So we start learning the function of words, like the article, the noun, the verb, the adverb, the adjective. And then we start building on that, like as far as like writing sentences, writing a whole paragraph. Okay, so I went over language. If anyone has any questions, let me know. And then I'm also going over science because I'm in that area. And this is our science area, which kind of goes along with geography. So we're teaching about the elements. So, and those are, once they start learning, there's a rule of how you do your science experiments. So you have to get your lab license and follow the rules. So, so we're very careful, and they're very good at that, and they love it because they get to use all those fancy science materials. So that's just another thing, another extension of math and geography as our science. So does anyone have any questions?
Ladies, I see that Ms. Kimlani does have a question, less about the materials that you all have gone through, but more about the placement of the children So whether or not we have discussed or decided which classes the children are going into. And Ms. Kimlani, that's a great question. I know the team does a lot of discussion around that as we try to be as intentional and strategic as possible in building the classrooms. So to my knowledge, that officially has not been communicated yet. Is there anyone else on the team that wants to add anything to that?
Well, I would be happy to speak to it for a little, just for a minute. I think that, you know, the process is very lengthy and very comprehensive, and it involves a lot of communication between the levels. There's lots of things to consider when placing those children. We want to look at, first we ask the primary teachers to observe in the lower elementary classrooms. We ask the lower elementary teachers to observe in the primary classrooms. If you can imagine, it's a little trickier to do that this spring than it has been in the past, but we are actively looking at each other's Zoom classes, and we want to get a feel for the current groups that are in the lower elementary classrooms. We always want to maintain that balance between girls and boys and ages and strengths and weaknesses, and who's already in the class and who would be good partners and who maybe needs to have a different experience from someone maybe that they've been with for a long time. When a child is moving from toddlers to primary, of course, so much of it is the connection between the adults, right? Because we're still really in that nurturing place where it's important that the adults are really in a good place and everybody agrees this is the right spot. As you heard today, those children moving into the second plane are actually morphing into this other kind of human. If you have older children, you already know that. And so much less of it is about the adult, and so much more of it is about the social connection. And we really want to make sure that we are making really good social groups. So although, of course, we would take your input in this decision, it's not as much of a priority as it is, we'll be very honest with you, when they move from toddler to primary. We really are looking at those individual children and the peer groups. So when that decision is made, it's not necessarily right now, but we are deep in discussion about it, and we're thinking about it, and that percolating on it and moving names around and creating different groups. So we want to make the best possible peer group. You know, we don't make decisions based on teachers, because teachers sometimes are not necessarily this most, I mean, not that our teachers are going anywhere, but the most stable piece is that we want to make sure they're with a group of peers that are going to support their continued social and emotional development. So that's a long explanation for a short question. I hope that's okay.
There was a question in the chat. So for anyone who is not able to monitor the chat, from Ms. Lazuka, that was, what was the name of the group of books that you have on the shelf for the early reader? And Ms. Mattingly has shared that it's called Now I'm Reading, a series by Nora Gray. So just as an FYI to everyone out there. Are there other things that you specifically wanted to share or show to the group?
Well, I just think it's important. I know that a lot of parents get nervous when their children are moving into elementary because it's so different. And I think some of the parents who have been through the process, because at first it's kind of their first year in, you're like, what's happening? It's so different, right? So if any of the parents, like the Kimlanis and like the Lazuka, like Jen, and like some of the other parents that have already had elementary experience, it is kind of a little bit, it's so different from primary, right? So it's kind of nice to be a little prepared for that. Does anyone want to share, you know, what you found the difference between primary and elementary as parents? Okay, hey, Jen.
Hi, everyone. I think the biggest one that I notice is it definitely gets to be more social, and the relationships with the kids become a really big deal. There's a lot more group work, I think, which was big. Before, I think in primary, I remember a lot more individual, but maybe some group lessons, but a lot more group work in elementary. And I definitely know as once it was like a huge switch. I think once Evelyn hit third grade, the peer piece is enormous. It really is true, Heather, what you were saying about, I definitely noticed about the differences and the reasons why the mixed classes and how you go about making sure each class has kind of the right mix. But yeah, it's a big difference. The social piece and gets a little bit more dramatic. But yeah, more group work, which was, definitely a big transition, I think, from primary, for sure. More group activities.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you for sharing, Jen. Other thoughts to share or other questions?
Hi, everybody. So I mean, I have Tanya who was in a lower elementary, and my son is going to lower elementary, and Tanya is moving up to upper elementary. I mean, seeing Tanya in primary and seeing Tanya in lower elementary, for my son, what I see is that as Tanya has grown to be a more, I mean, it adds to, if I may say, confidence, of a child's personality. And of course, she's the lots of learning. Not that in primary there's no learning, but this is the age where, from being a baby child, they're growing to be proper growing up children. And I mean, Ms. DiFrancesco knows I've had so many concerns and questions about Tanya's growing up, but I think it's a great evolvement of the children, like every process is. But from elementary, I think it's very, very important. It's it lays a good foundation for the coming next grade, which is, I think, the upper elementary. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of fun also for the children. I mean, it's great. And yeah, it's personality evolvement also that I would like to add to whatever Ms. Jen said.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Mr. Kimlani. And also just a point to note, we will be sending out after this session some additional lessons and videos of what's happening in the lower elementary classroom, which will also provide, I think, some more context for what you're seeing and hearing as you prepare for that transition too. So be on the lookout for that to come through your inboxes here in the next day or so.
One thing, one of Ms. Mattingly mentioned that, it's a really big transition for families going from primary to lower elementary, and everybody has mentioned the social piece. It does become very important, and that is what most of the stories come home about, both positive and negative. You'll likely hear a lot of friend drama that seems like it's the end of the world. And one of the things that we really focus on, how we support the children kind of across the board, whether it's academic or social, is empowering them with the skills to find the answer for themselves. So for all of the subjects, we kind of teach how to find the answer, not what the answer is. We help the children ask a question and then teach them how to find the answer. And it's the same with the social piece as well. We teach them about how humans interact. We let them experience it for themselves and then kind of help them be able to find the answer for themselves of how to navigate friendships and social situations like that. And they have with the group work throughout the classroom, and we also have the same 3-hour work cycle, and the children are working in their small groups. They'll come to a lesson and then work in small groups, and those kind of evolve throughout the day. So they have a lot of opportunity to test what the answer is and to kind of find out what works and what doesn't. So, that's just kind of something to prepare yourself for. There's going to be a lot of times where it seems not to be working. And so just keeping that in mind, that it's kind of part of the process, and, supporting your children in kind of experiencing those difficult situations and using them to, you know, inform their choices next time can just kind of help keep things in perspective, because it can be a really big shift when the children come home talking about what's happening in the classroom. And it does kind of take some time for both children and parents to adjust. So just keeping in mind that it's kind of all part of the process, and that's why we have the 3 years together, so we can really work on that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
I had a question. This is Marilyn. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
So my son is Liam Smith. He's in Miss Boyle's class. Sorry, I was late. I heard that sometimes some of the students in lower L actually get sent back to primary for a day if they're like when they first arrive, or you know, if things happen. When do you usually use that, and is that like a really bad sign, or is that a tool that you guys kind of keep in your back pocket for like nuclear option or something?
Yeah. Well said. That, I think that's for like, that's the pulling the card. That's the last one. So that's usually with a behavior issue. If somebody is refusing to you know, behave properly or follow the rules, then that will happen, and that's a big deal. And then that usually doesn't happen again after that. So and we hardly ever have to do that. So it's only happened a couple times, but it's just to be aware that this is elementary, and yep, you're responsible for listening and behaving properly. And
So if that happens,
yeah, so it's usually for, what's that?
well, if that happens, that's something we should really, is there usually like a meeting with the parent, or like, are we told?
Yes. Well, yeah, you'll know if that happens. So we usually contact the parent and say, oh, this happened today. And usually before that happens, we'll say, okay, if that behavior keeps going, we have to do, you know, something. So,
Okay.
So here's what we were thinking. You know, we usually have like a little plan laid out, so it's not like, you know, that's an option. If you know that behavior is something that you're even working on at home, then we usually speak to the parents about that beforehand, because it's not like it's just going to happen out of nowhere. You know what I mean? So, you know, if you know, oh, we have a little problem listening, then you work with the teachers, and we come up with a good plan. So it's not just out of the blue that happens.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Any additional thoughts to share, or maybe final questions from the group? Well, just as a reminder, this has been recorded, so I'll share this out to you in addition to the lessons and the videos, again, so you can kind of get more of an idea of what's happening in the lower elementary environment. We are here available to you anytime, current family, prospective family, reach out to us via phone, email. I'm happy to help and support in any way that we can. But if there aren't any final questions or thoughts or comments, I think that's all we have for you today. Okay, this is our most maybe efficient meeting yet, not sure. Well, everybody, thanks so much for coming. You know how to find us. I hope you have a beautiful afternoon and rest of the week, and let us know what we can do to support you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.